you to this wonderful new interview format that we're doing as part of our new Discord server, Canadian STEM Youth.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, thank you very much for being our first guest in the new format, the new interviews. Excited to get to know a little bit more about you and what you do personally, professionally, and where your love of STEM comes from. And yes, as Chantal says in the chat, break a leg, um,
I
which is
got
interesting
one
because
right here.
yeah, I was about to say you have a bone right there. Of course you do.
Not real human remains.
Well, I mean, that's good to know. Great.
Yeah.
Do you want to start us off by introducing yourself? Tell us who you are, why we should be listening to you right now.
Yeah, sure. Hey everyone, I'm Katie. I am a Master of Science student, just finishing up my degree at the University of Toronto in evolutionary anthropology. I am a biological anthropologist, I am a bioarchaeologist, and I am a skeletal biologist. So I study the skeletal system of humans and pretty much what makes us human in the past and the present through the skeleton.
Okay. There was a lot of big words there that you used. Do you want to explain the difference between what all the different types of biologists
Yeah,
that you just
definitely.
mentioned were?
So I'm a biological anthropologist. So anthropology in general is the study of humans. And anthropology has four subfields. So there's sociocultural anthropology, which studies culture and what makes us human through culture. There's linguistic anthropology, which studies how languages change over time and different languages. There's archaeology, which I think a lot of folks know about. Although contrary to popular belief, archaeologists don't dig up dinosaur bones. Archaeologists dig up material culture as well as human remains and animal remains, other than dinosaurs. And there is biological anthropology, which is the study of the biology of humans and what makes us human genetically from an evolutionary perspective. It studies humans as well as our non-human primate cousins, such as the living or extant primates, as well as extinct primates, such as the early hominins. So I'm a biological anthropologist and a bioarchaeologist, so I do a little bit of both between biological anthropology and archaeology. Bioarchaeology excavates and studies human remains from the past, and biological anthropology looks at the biology of humans in any way that you can study the biology of humans, but I look at the skeleton.
Looks at the past, and the other one kind of looks at the present, almost.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and so you're doing these two things at the same time. How? What is that? How are you doing two things at the same time? Like, what are you doing? Are you doing two different master's degrees? What's
Yeah,
going on
so
here?
they're kind of part and parcel. So a lot of biological anthropologists are bioarchaeologists. So bioarchaeology is a type of biological anthropology, and skeletal biology is a type of biological anthropology, and evolutionary anthropology is a type of biological anthropology. So although I do many different things, it all falls under the umbrella of biological anthropology. So at the end of the day, I'm doing one things with lots of different subparts.
Okay, okay. So probably the most important question I have for you in all of today's interview is, what's the difference between a grave robber and an archaeologist?
That's a really good question, actually, and one that I get a lot. So a
Here I thought
really
I was being unique.
No, it's actually a really common question. It's a very valid question. So a really big difference between a grave robber and an archaeologist is, first of all, archaeologists are bound by ethics. To excavate a site, you have to have ethical approval. If it's in a community, you should be working with the community and community-based archaeology. You should have the permissions. And another thing that makes it different from grave robbing is that you are publishing your research. So grave robbing is for self-gratification, to sell things, whereas in archaeology, you're doing things to further human knowledge, and you should be publishing what you find out in peer-reviewed journals. You should be talking perhaps to media outlets. So you're letting the public know about our past. So ethics is the biggest thing, as well as dissemination of research. And in the past, archaeology hasn't been ethical, and that's something that our discipline is definitely reconciling with. But right now we're trying to become more ethical, use more community-based methods, and get those permissions that we need.
Fair enough. Yeah, great answer. All right. So tell us in the group, have you ever gone on any excavations, and do you have any fun stories from what that looks
That's
like
a
in the
really
field?
great question. So I do more of lab-based archaeology. So I look at the material remains and the skeletal remains when they come back into the lab. That being said, I was supposed to go on two different excavations, one cemetery excavation and one material culture excavation, looking at lithics and stone tools, and ceramics or pots and different fragments of pots and that kind of thing. Um, that being said, they've both been derailed by COVID, but I hope to do
Love it. Yeah.
some excavations in the future because that's something I'd really like to dip my toe into. I love lab work, but
Mhm.
I think it'll be great to really get out into the field as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, COVID. Well, yeah, that's what. Yep, COVID does it for us, doesn't it? So,
Yep.
okay. Next question for you then. How did you get into this field?
That's a really great question. So I took a very indirect route to get into
Hmm.
anthropology. And I guess it started with the fact that in high school, I knew I wanted to go into something sciencey. I did science fairs growing up, and I knew that science was the path for me. But I also really loved history, and I loved learning about the past. So by doing anthropology, later I was able to find out I get to combine those two passions, and I get to use science to learn about the past. But the way I actually got into it was a little bit roundabout. So I started my undergraduate degree in engineering. And I wanted to do either electrical engineering or materials engineering. And as I worked through engineering, I veered towards materials engineering. But then I ended up taking an anthropology elective. And the way I took that anthropology elective is a little bit funny. When I was in grade 12, I didn't have Netflix, so the way that I binge watched TV was by going to the library, taking out DVDs, and watching them on my portable DVD player. So I got really into Star Trek Next Generation, which is a show that I didn't think I'd get into, but I became a huge Star Trek nerd. And I was trying to get, I think, season 4 of Star Trek Next Gen. And I went to the library, and because I hadn't put a hold on it, because I didn't know when I was going to finish the other season, it wasn't there. And I was really upset. So, in my devastation of not being able to watch the next season of my Star Trek, I grabbed a random DVD off the shelf. And the random DVD off the shelf I ended up grabbing was called Bones. And Bones is a quite a popular TV series. It ran for many seasons.
Love it. Yep.
At this point, it was still running. And I thought, okay, this looks kind of cool. I guess I'll watch it. And Bones is about forensic anthropology, which is using anthropology, so skeletal remains for forensic context. And I thought, oh, okay, I like this show. It ended up becoming one of my favorite shows, and then I took an elective in it. I found out in the elective that anthropology is not anything like they show on TV. It's not nearly
Yeah.
as glamorized. But that's how I got into the elective. And through the elective, I took some courses from a really great professor, Dr. Rebecca Gilmore, and she really inspired me to do anthropology. She taught me about how I can use biomechanical analyses, which is borrowed from engineering, in anthropology. And at that point, I was sold. I could do everything I wanted in one degree, and that's how I got there.
Okay. Wow. So yeah. So Star Trek to Bones to an elective to dropping engineering real quick. Yep. Drop that. Straight to anthropology. Nice. So is there? But okay. So you say it's not like Bones at all, but please tell me there's at least an enhance button that you just like click a couple of times, and all of a sudden you can see inside the bones. And is that
Well,
how you solve all the murders, right?
I mean, we're getting really, really advanced with a lot of the technologies we have. For example, microcomputed tomography scans. You may have heard of computed tomography, CT or CAT scans in a hospital. Well, we have even higher resolution ones than medical scans to look at bones and the inner structure of bones, for example. So, micro CT, PQCT, these are some of the methods that we use. So there's nothing like we have on TV where you click a button and you solve a case. I wish we had something like that, both for forensics and for other aspects of biological anthropology in general. Although we don't have that, we have so many cool technologies that are getting really, really more enhanced every day. And a lot of the times, I think a lot of the things that we use today, people 50 years ago would not have even believed it. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't even believe it, and I'm talking to you right now. So, so Johan wants to know, what kind of career outcomes can be had from this and from this field?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So anthropologists in general work in a number of fields. I'll focus on biological anthropology because that's what I do. But you can work in industry. So there's an industry called CRM, Cultural Resource Management. And if you have a degree in biological anthropology or bioarchaeology, usually it's more for archaeology, then you can work for an industry. And whenever they're building a highway or a subdivision and they need somebody to look at it archaeologically and excavate it, then they bring in a CRM firm. So you can work in industry in that way. You can also work in museums, in curation, and collections and research in that way. So a lot of anthropologists do work in museums. You can work in academia. So you can become a professor at a university or a college and you can teach. Which is a really great route, and the route I'm following myself. And you can also, anthropologists, it's a degree in humans. So anthropology is something that you can really transfer to a lot of different disciplines, both inside and outside the sciences. For example, some aspects of anthropology, such as sociocultural anthropology, is kind of purely a social science, and a lot of sociocultural anthropologists will do things like what we call ethnography work, which is studying humans, learning about human culture, and a lot of companies hire them to find out why isn't my product successful, or what might make my product successful, and that's becoming increasingly common too. And then government, anthropologists can really work in any sort of sector, but I think the most common would probably be in the CRM industry and in academia.
Mm-hmm. So does that mean there's a PhD on the horizon for you?
It does, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got my applications in, so hopefully that's gonna be what's next on my agenda.
Do you know roughly what sort of specialty you want to look into?
Yeah, so I want to continue on with bioarchaeology, and I also want to implement a lot of human biology and more medical applications of biological anthropology, such as orthopedics. So one of the really cool things about anthropology and biological anthropology is we study human variation. So humans are an incredibly variable species, and you can see that just by looking around and looking at other people. We have so many different variations. Some people are tall, some people are shorter, all sorts of different variability. So that variability, of course, manifests in our bones as well. And learning about that variability for orthopedics is a really important next step. So that's something I'm hoping to do in the future.
Nice. Well, good luck to you.
Thank you.
Is there something about this whole field now that you've started studying it that really surprised you, like some sort of fun fact that you think people probably don't know, something that you didn't know before going into it, but now you're like, this is something that everyone needs to know. Give us the deets.
Yeah,
Spill the beans.
I think that a lot of people think of our skeleton as just something that supports our body and holds it up. But the skeleton plays so many different important roles, and the skeleton itself is truly alive. So one really cool thing about our skeleton is in our long bones. So we have different types of bones. We've got long bones, we've got flat bones, and the long bones are the ones that are like in our arms and legs, aptly named long bones because they're kind of like long tubes. And our bones are actually very alive. So they respond to things like mechanical stressors or metabolic stresses. So as we walk and exercise, for example, our bone either adds bone or takes away bone to slightly change the shape and geometry of our bones. So our bones are living and they react and live with us. And there are a lot of things about us that are kind of etched into our bones. For example, people with certain careers might have certain things in their what we call osteobiography, which is how we tell about a person from their bones. So, for somebody who might be squatting a lot, they might have squatting facets in their bones, which are little divots from that repetitive stress. So our bones are really alive, and they work with us, and they live with us, and you can tell so much about a person from just their bones. And I find that fascinating because you can't talk to somebody from like 1,000 years ago, but you can look at their skeleton, you can learn a lot about them, which is really fascinating. So I think that's the really rewarding and cool fact that I find about the field.
That's mind. Okay, I was not ready for that. I swear, the only way my bones react right now is like breaking, or you know. Thankfully, modern medicine is very, very good at putting it all back together again.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to give us a quick rundown then of what a day to day in the life of someone
Yeah.
doing two different masters is like, and
Well,
doing bioanthropology looks like?
yeah. So it's one master's for me. Yeah. I well, I like to treat things like any other regular job. So a lot of what I do is lab work, which is a little bit different now with COVID. A lot of that's
Mhm.
remote, and a lot of that's digital work. But my research right now, I'm looking at medical CT scans, and I'm doing a lot of computer work. So I'm taking a full body CT scan, and I'm looking at just the bones, and I'm doing some measurements and computational work with the bones. Um, so there's that. I'll do a good chunk of research during my day. I also am lucky that I get to teach. So I
Mhm.
get to teach a few labs. I've taught in forensic science, biology, and biological anthropology, and general anthropology as well. And I get to teach undergraduate students, which is so rewarding because I just love hearing people excited about what I'm also excited about. So I get to do teaching during the day. Marking comes with teaching, so I'll do a lot of marking, but I enjoy that as well. Um, Lab meetings, lots of meetings. So I get to meet with my lab mates. I get to meet with other people in their lab. I get to meet with the professional organizations that I'm in. And I also get to do a lot of conferences. So several times a year, I get to go to a conference. It's just like a grown-up science fair. I think that's why I went into academia. You bring your poster or your podium presentation, and you get to present about the cool science you're doing. So those are probably the main components that make up a day to day. I think a lot of graduate students and professors get bogged down in trying to work 24/7, but it's also important to have a healthy work life balance as well. So my day to day also includes things like doing art or going for a walk.
Nice, nice. I mean, it's ironic because we're recording this on a Sunday, but I do love the mention of work-life balance being so very important. I do have many more questions about how to get into this field, but before I do, Johan had a fantastic question in the chat. He wants to know, bone marrow is a very important aspect of medical science, mainly in regards to stem cells nowadays. Is bone marrow still a relevant indicator of something or anything in skeletal remains?
That's a really good question. So, in skeletal remains, if we're looking at them, for example, archaeologically, we're not actually going to find that bone marrow. We're going to see a medullary cavity. So, we're going to get a hollow bone.
Hmm.
Because what happens through time with bone is that the more organic components are either replaced through fossilization, or there's just weathering and what we call taphonomic processes, which are all the different things that happen to your bones after you pass away. Um, I'm sure that bone marrow might be used in cadaveric research, but I'm not. That's not my area. But when we're looking at a bone post-mortem, especially archaeologically, depending on the context it's been in, has it been in the ground, has it been in storage, we're usually looking at quite weathered bones that don't have things like marrow. So even the bones themselves aren't necessarily intact. So in archaeology, for looking at the skeletal remains in a grave context, a lot of the times pieces of the bone will be gone, there will be fragments, and that all depends on the condition. So,
Hmm.
long story short, I guess, things like bone marrow aren't something that we find when we're dealing with skeletal remains, typically in what I'm doing. Um, but there might be exceptions to that. But that's not something I'm super versed up on.
Archaeology is like the ultimate jigsaw puzzle, isn't it?
It
Mixing a bit
is.
of history. Yeah, a fun afternoon activity that usually takes months and months and months. Um, so, for someone interested in this field, what sort of subjects would people in high school want to take to prepare for this? Are there any programs or courses in the community to look into? What sort of university degree should they be looking at?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. So out of things to take in high school, I took all my sciences. I always
Hmm.
recommend that everybody takes all their sciences as well. And the cool thing about what I do is that we use all different types of sciences. So I do biomechanics, so I'm mostly using physics, but some people do isotopic analysis of bone, so they're using chemistry. And biology is, of course, important because
Hmm.
what we're dealing with is overarchingly biology with skeletal biology. So I would recommend taking all your sciences if you can, if you're interested. Fun fact, I didn't think I was going to like physics or mechanics. My parents told me, take it in grade 11. If you don't like it, you don't have to take it in grade 12. I ended up really liking it, and now I do mechanics every day as my career. So, take things, try new things. And in terms of undergraduate degrees, you'd be looking at either a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science in anthropology, biological anthropology, evolutionary anthropology, forensic anthropology. These are all different types, different sort
Hmm.
of flavors of the same idea. And yeah, you can always reach out as well to people whose research you find interesting to talk to them. They might be interested in having a chat. Because I don't think it's ever too early to get into anthropology. I saw a high school student at one of the most recent conferences I was at, and everybody was so excited about that she was getting into anthropology at a younger age than a lot of people do.
Yeah, that's a fun tip I think for everyone too, is that so many scientists love chatting to young people about their work and about their field. They love seeing passion come from younger students, and they absolutely want to give you a hand. So maybe not every single scientist. Some people have busy lives, but I mean, definitely just reach out to people you find interesting. Send them a message on Twitter, send them an email. You can find their email address. Find some connections. Yeah, so many more people are interested in getting you interested in what they do. People love talking about the things they're passionate about, so definitely reach out when you can.
100%.
Hundy P. Chantal wants to know, is this a competitive field for people?
That's a really great question. So it is a bit of a competitive field. If you want to go into academia, there are more people looking for a lot of jobs than there are jobs, unfortunately, right now. That may change in the future. Hopefully, it'll change in the future. But it can be competitive in that aspect, especially if you want to go into academia. But if you want to go into what we call alt-ac, which is careers other than academia, there are lots of different options, just as there are for any career. So there's lots of CRM work. Museums is a little bit more competitive as well. But you can go into the public service, government. You can work in research for companies. There's lots of opportunities. So it all depends what you want to do with what presumably in this case you would have a post-secondary education because that's kind of a prerequisite for a lot of careers, but not all as well. If you want to get into something like archaeology, sometimes people don't have post-secondary education, but that's not especially common. But it can be competitive. But I think my biggest tip is know what you're getting into for any job. Know if it's competitive, what the job market's like. But if it's what you want to do, don't let things stop you. Because your happiness is the most important thing, and you can figure things out along the way. Things will be okay.
Things will be okay. Yeah, definitely figuring things out along the way is so important. I mean, no one expects. Or we always people always say that when you're 18, you must know what university you want to go to, what career you want to do. Um, I don't know anyone in my generation, let alone a younger generation, that has anything figured out. I don't know anyone that's stuck with the same career that they thought they were going to do when they were 17. Most people I know changed university degrees along the way, or universities along the way. I mean, I'm not even doing anything remotely related to what I studied at university and the career I went into for a couple of years afterwards. So, yeah, I mean, I think trying to find that thing that you're passionate about, and then also finding some sort of way to merge your passion with some sort of, productive and some sort of job that pays the bills is a good way
Yeah.
to go about things.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about how interconnected STEM is. You say all the different four sciences that you'd study at high school is something that you use pretty regularly in your day-to-day life now as a researcher. I would also just say that a thing that we probably don't talk enough about is the niche of combining two completely separate passions that you have. So if you want to become a bioanthropologist, but you also have a huge big passion, sorry, for movies. Shows like Bones need some sort of bioanthropologist
Hmm.
to give them advice on what that should look like. So there's all these like very niche jobs and niche roles that might not be the first thing you think of, but could lead to, some amazingly enjoyable life for you and career after university.
100%. Like what I'm doing right now, I didn't even know what it was when I was like 16. I
Hmm.
didn't know it existed. So I thought I was going to become a computer scientist. I still enjoy coding. I use coding. It's an important part of a lot of research, especially if you're doing any sort of statistical analyses. But yeah, I didn't know the career I'm in right now. I didn't know it existed like a decade ago. So it's
Yeah.
weird.
And that's the other thing. There's like some random statistic. I'll just make it up out of the air, but something like three-quarters of all jobs that will exist in 10 years don't exist now.
Yeah.
And I think that's just going to become an exponential growth in jobs that don't exist now. So how can you possibly prepare for a career that might not even exist? You
Oh,
prepare by
100%.
doing general sciences and combining your different passions and becoming a well-rounded individual that can then choose a specialty later on once you figure out, or once the
Hmm.
job you don't even know exists ends up
Yeah.
existing.
I would say the important thing is getting those skills down.
Yeah.
As long as you have the skills to be able to learn, to apply, to think critically and analytically, then you can take those pretty much anywhere you want. So it's more a matter of getting the skills down. I hear a lot of people say, why am I learning trigonometry? I'll never use trigonometry again. You might, but if you don't, um, you're learning how to think critically and analytically, and those are the skills that you're going to take away. So yeah, you might not know what you're doing in a while. I mean, people aren't staying in
I
the
still
same
don't.
job anymore. People are changing careers, but the thing that's important is learning those critical thinking skills that you can take anywhere you want.
And look, I might be biased, but a really fun, fantastic, enjoyable way to learn critical thinking skills and to be a bit curious is to do a STEM project. Just saying.
I agree.
Yeah. Who knows where it takes you? Um, Johan also had a fantastic follow-up question, and that was, how do you go about finding or searching for programs like a master's or a PhD to pursue?
That's a really, really good question. Um, so a lot of the times it does take a little bit of legwork. So I found in my undergrad, I had an idea that I wanted to go to graduate school, but it's not often very advertised. It can
Hmm.
be very difficult to find people to connect with who have been through experiences that you're looking to pursue. It can be difficult to know even how to apply or how to do that sort of thing. So the important thing is, first of all, just amassing as much information you can, going on the internet, looking at different universities, their departments, different faculty members, what they're researching, and how that research might align with what you're interested in. And before you apply to any graduate program, please do speak to the supervisor that you'd like to have. It's really unfortunate sometimes in that a lot of people don't know how applications work and they might want to apply. And they might apply without speaking to somebody that they might like to work with. And it's so important to have that conversation to make sure your research interests align, to make sure that they might have a spot for you in their lab, different things like that. So contacting faculty members and professors to make sure that they're a good fit to see if you'd like to work with them, because the supervisee relationship is a very, very important one. I'm lucky in that my current supervisor, Dr. Michelle Cameron, is an absolute superstar. She's a person I look up to as a scientist and as a person. And you want to make sure that person's a great fit. So a lot of first just looking for that base information, programs, what prerequisites do they need to apply? Do you need reference letters, which usually you will? And also, I would recommend if you're in an undergraduate degree, get to know your professors. They're in your corner. Go to their office hours, and you might get a reference letter out of it. But even better, you might get some really valuable knowledge or information, or just really great chats with them in office hours. So I highly recommend getting to know your professors in an undergraduate degree as well, and making use of the resources you have. Like advisors, career advisors, different universities often have career centers, that kind of thing.
Absolutely, fantastic advice. Couldn't agree more. And similar to that, then, are there people that you look up to in your field? Is there any individual research that really caught your eye and you think people should know more about if they're interested in this field?
Oh my
Chantal is
goodness,
bringing some
yes.
great questions right now.
Oh, there's so many. So, two of the people that I look up to in the field, I've already mentioned. They're both relatively new scholars. One is Dr. Rebecca Gilmore, who is an assistant professor at Mount Royal University in Calgary. There's also Dr. Michelle Cameron, who's an assistant professor in evolutionary anthropology at the University of Toronto, and she's my supervisor. Both of them do really incredible work. Dr. Gilmore does work with looking at disability, impairment, and what we call paleopathology. So looking at medical things like disease and fracture and different things like that in the bioarchaeological record. Dr. Cameron does a lot of really great research with looking at how people's biology and skeleton adapt to their environment. And they're both doing really great things. There are so many others too that I look up to. Dr. Lauren Schroeder, who's a professor at University of Toronto. She does really great work about our early hominid ancestors. So who we came from, that kind of thing. Um, so many people I can think of, but those are a few of them. Yeah, there are some really great up and coming scholars in the field that are doing some really incredible work. And like I said before, anthropology has a fraught past.
Hmm.
But I think there are so many people that are making it to be a better field for the future and for future anthropologists.
Nice. That's so good to hear. Are there any mentors or people you look up to, like even from a personal basis?
Yeah, absolutely. So two of the people that I look up to as personal mentors would be
You can
Dan
say me, it's
Bowman
fine.
and George Gatesy. They were two of my delegates at the Canada-wide Science Fair.
Nice.
And they have been so supportive of my scientific career. I work with them now on the regional level at our regional fair, and they do so much to get kids interested in science. I mean, everybody that's involved with science fairs does, but they really were supportive and impacted
Hmm.
the way I think about science and the world, and I look up to them absolutely a whole lot.
Nice. In your words, what is the importance of science fair, of doing a STEM project, of being curious, of exploring that sort of passion?
Yeah. So I think the importance of doing a STEM project is important both from a professional development perspective and a personal development perspective. Because professionally, like I said, you're learning a lot of those skills. You're learning how to critically think, how to analyze things, how to be analytical. Um, and even if you don't end up in the sciences, those skills are really important. And you might work with scientists and you might want to know how a little bit about the background of how that science works, and that'll help you in there. From a personal perspective, even things like time management, the satisfaction of seeing something through from beginning to end, and not to mention the incredible friendships you can make. Um, a lot of my best friends right now are from science fair over the years, and It's really great to meet like-minded people who are interested in very similar things to you. And yeah, highly recommend doing a STEM project, because you never know what doors it can open. You've got nothing to lose.
Yeah, exactly. And it's fun. Yeah, as you say, you,
100%.
you meet really cool people, there's unique experiences, you have fun along the way, you learn things along the way, you learn more about the way you learn, the way you interact with people. Yeah, it's a great way to explore that curious side of you that you have as a child, and try to continue and keep that curiosity with you as you age up. Don't let
100%.
society press down that curiosity. Always stay curious, always question why. But yeah, absolutely lovely. Do you remember your first science fair project? Do you remember
I
what you
do.
studied? What your topic
So
was?
my first science fair project, I was in grade 7. I
Hmm.
did science fair from grade 7 all the way through grade 12. And my first one was called Mybrary. So it was a database that I coded. As a child, I still try to be, but it's a little more difficult these days. Was a voracious reader. I had so many books. I still have lots of books. I love collecting books and reading books. So the problem I encountered was I had no idea which books I had were where and which books I liked the best. I couldn't remember. So I made a catalog where I could keep track of the books I had, where they were, and my ratings and comments about each one. So I coded up a database and made a program for that, and that was called Mybrary, and that was my first step into science fair.
Nice, I like that. It's like a precursor to Goodreads, which is something I use a lot
Kind
now.
of.
But Myberry sounds way better. That's such a cool name. What?
Thanks.
Do you remember your most challenging science fair project over the years?
Yes, yes. My most challenging
Yes. Straight up, yes.
my most challenging science fair project was in grade 12. And it wasn't the project itself that was challenging. It was that I had an initial idea that I worked on for months,
Hmm.
and it didn't end up working out. And I was working on it, and it just wasn't going to work. And I remember my parents telling me, you know what, it's okay to step back from this. You've worked on this, you've learned a lot. You don't have to do a science fair project this year. It doesn't have to be a successful thing, everything you do. Um, but I said, no, I love science fair. I'm doing a project. So I remember we have a lazy boy chair. I sat in that chair and I said, I'm not leaving this chair until I have an idea.
And
So
3 weeks later, SpongeBob me.
sat in that chair
Yeah.
and I thought all about what kind of problems do I want to solve? Because I always did engineering type projects. What kind of problems have I encountered or my family and friends encountered that I'd like to solve? So I finally thought of something, and I did it, and I just felt really proud of myself. I did things in a faster time frame than I would have, because I had this quote unquote failed project, which I don't think is a failure because it led me to a lot of the things that I did later. But that was my most challenging. Is my grade 12 project, thinking, what do I want to do? How am I going to do it? And how am I going to move on from this setback?
I love how supportive your parents were in that, and I love how determined you were as well to just be like,
Oh
no,
yeah,
I'm going to do something. I'm going to just sit here and just think really hard and come up with something wonderful.
yeah.
Um, how do you maintain that passion, that determination for STEM, for embracing your curiosity when you just face challenge after challenge? Like, how did you keep that going?
That's a really good question. And the truth is, sometimes you don't. I think that in today's world, when we have things like social media, you see everybody at their best, doing their best, showing you their best things. And that's not how it works all the time. You try and get up that motivation, but some days you're just not feeling your best. You feel discouraged. You feel like you can't do the things you want to do. And then imposter syndrome is another issue. You feel like, oh, I don't belong here. Other people do. They're doing so much better, but they're thinking the same thing. So I think the way to keep yourself motivated is to think about the fact that you're a person, you're not your work. You might love your work is so important, but you're not your work. You're so much more. You're a whole person with likes and dislikes, and your work is an important part of what you do, but thinking about just the fact that you're more than that. And I think stepping back and thinking about that kind of thing really gets you a fresh perspective and brings you the motivation you need to carry on. Sometimes just sitting back and thinking, you know what, I'm gonna do something for me right now, gives you that fresh perspective to head back to something with a new outlook and continue on and be motivated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yeah, as you say, social media in particular probably amplifies this, but even if you love something with your entire being, there's going to be days where it's not fun.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
that's true of anything and everything. There's going to be days where you don't want to do it. You're not finding it fun anymore. There's too much admin involved. You just want to, even if it's just being creative, if you like to draw, there's going to be times where you just don't want to draw. And that's perfectly okay. That doesn't mean your passion is any less valuable than it was before. It doesn't mean that, you've lost the spark or anything like that. As you say, you just have to remember you're a human being with real feelings and thoughts and emotional patterns, and you just need to figure out in life, and it's unique for everyone, but there's certain things that you can all do. How to get yourself out of that slump when it happens, and how to find that motivation again. And a lot of it comes down to creating an environment where you feel safe and comfortable to do the thing you need to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if you're lying in your bed right now trying to study for homework, that's probably not the right space for you. Get up, go for a walk, grab a coffee.
In my first year of university, I went to a how to learn and study best seminar because that's the kind of person I am.
That's cool.
And a psychology professor told the group of us that if you have an object that you associate with being productive, whether it be a little statue or a trinket, and you take it out when you're being productive, and then the second you stop being productive, you put it away, you start to associate the presence of that object with being productive. So that's something that I've tried. It's actually pretty good. So there's another like little science-based tip.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've done the same thing. I have a table now, like a computer desk with my laptop and my screen here that I'm working on right now. But I also have an iPad, which I know is a very privileged thing to say. I worked hard for it, all right? But I found that when I was, like, a lot of my work is on a laptop doing admin tasks. And then a big part of my job as well is to be creative. And I found that I couldn't be creative in the same space that I was also doing all of these Word documents and strategies and all this more like admin, thinking, long-term planning sort of work. So I actually needed a separate device that I could take to a different space. So then I sit on the couch, I put some music on the TV, and then I can just like draw on my iPad, do my graphic design, do my photo editing and video editing, whatever I need to in a different space away. And that's sometimes all you need is to just break that pattern of what you, I don't know, of where you're working, what you're trying to do. I think there's also some research that says you shouldn't watch movies in bed because then it also affects your sleep pattern because your body expects to be sleeping in one spot, but then you start adding entertainment and some sort of excitement to that same space, and it makes it very difficult to be able to split. Like your mind can't just like turn off; it doesn't just switch off like that. So you need to be able to split those patterns. Yeah, love a bit of science. Some fun facts. A really good question for you is, you said you went to this university course, how to learn. When you were in high school, how did you go about figuring out how you learn best, how you study best? Because I think it's something that a lot of high schoolers probably struggle with. It's something I struggle with because usually a teacher tells you how to do something and then you just do it. I know for me, I thought I had to write out a whole bunch of notes to study for exams, and it wasn't until my university degree that I realized, oh, that's actually not the way I learn the most efficient.
Yeah, I think the most important way to find out how you learn, whether it be visual or kinesthetic or auditory, or maybe you're a multimodal learner and you learn in many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I think the important thing is to try different things. Try different ways and see what works best for you. I think it'd be good to think of it like a toolbox. So if you go to Home Depot, there's like a trillion different tools, but you don't need all of them. They're not all going to work for you. Maybe in your toolbox you need a screwdriver, a saw, and a pair of work glasses. And you can think of study techniques the same way. You can go and you can try writing on cue cards, or you can try recording something and listening to it back, or you can try you can try anything and try all those things, and some of them will work and some of them won't work. And the things that work, add them to your toolbox. So for me, the thing that works is writing everything down. So exactly the opposite of you, Stuart. I like writing down things. I like color coding things. I like testing myself. But that doesn't work for everyone. So try different things, find different ways, and see what works for you. If it doesn't work for you, that's okay. Find something new.
Nice. Okay, that was such wonderful advice. I'm going to ask you more questions. Some more life advice for everyone listening. Do you have any tips for surviving high school? Anything you wish your high school version of you knew at the time?
Great question. I think the important thing about high school is there's a lot of things. I think, first of all, find your people. For me, my people were my trivia club friends, my friends that I ate lunch with, people in different clubs I was in, because they had similar passions to me. It took me a little while in high school to find my people, and I often felt like I wasn't going to. High school is really hard because it's everybody going through a lot all at once in one place. And that can be really scary. So finding your people and having that support network is really important. And it doesn't even have to be in school. Maybe you have an extracurricular outside of school. Yeah, I think that's my number one thing, and just not taking yourself too seriously. I think that's something that took me a little while to learn, that not everything is a life or death situation, and have fun, do your best, work hard, but not everything has to be life or death. Let yourself have fun. Let yourself do things you enjoy. Be happy, safe, creative. But if you fail a test in grade 11 math, that's really upsetting. I know a lot of people say you're never going to remember it. You know what? You might remember it. I remember some. But that doesn't make it a life-defining event. That doesn't define you. Things are going to get better. They're going to be okay. And if you were perfect all the time, you wouldn't be a person. You'd be a robot. So letting yourself make those mistakes, being kind to yourself, those are some of the things I think are important.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. What good advice. Clearly, I love the find your people advice. It's something that I spend a lot of my time now doing is trying to create spaces for people to find their people. It was something I didn't have at high school. I didn't have a group of people to support me. I didn't have people that shared the same passions with me. So now that I'm older and in a position that I can offer that to other people, like the Canadian STEM Youth Discord channel, for example, I create this space because I know how difficult it can be to find people that have the same interests as you, especially in a lot of smaller communities, or on the other end of the scale, in huge, big communities. Sometimes it's actually hard to find people that share the same interests because there's just so many people and you're not sure how to approach that topic.
Mm-hmm.
Katie,
I
I think your microphone has just changed a little bit.
Did it? Is it back?
Yeah, there's a bit of a tone again to it. It's a little bit better now. Okay, no, that's okay. That's okay.
Is it better now?
Yeah, way better now.
Okay, cool.
Of course, Johan. Yeah, I just plugged my own server in the interview. Of course I did. The whole point of this is self-promotion, didn't you know? Brilliant. So, find your people. Absolutely fantastic advice. Don't take yourself too seriously. I know it's so hard when self-confidence is such a big issue for people, especially as you're going through your teenage years, especially as you're going through your early 20s. I mean, late 20s. Everyone always struggles with self-confidence. And I think finding that confidence in yourself to not take yourself so seriously and to not take everyone else around you so seriously can be so important. As you say, everything doesn't have to become a life-defining moment. Even if you remember it, it doesn't mean it's life-defining. It just means that you can take lessons from all of those experiences with you. Do you have similar advice for people surviving university, their undergrad?
Yeah, I guess another thing, and I guess this applies to both, would be don't worry too much about what other people think of you. It's so hard to do, and it's such a cliche piece of advice. But the people that are thinking badly of you aren't the people you want around anyway. And one piece of advice that I heard that has helped me along the way is treat yourself like you treat your best friend. If you failed something or you haven't done well in something or you forget something, if your best friend did it, you wouldn't say you are a complete failure. There's nothing good about you, right? You wouldn't say that to your friends. So why would you say it to yourself? Be friends with yourself. And not everything's all or nothing either, right? It's not I failed or I did amazing. Sometimes you just do okay. And that's okay too. It's not all or nothing.
Yeah. I think going back to that earlier piece of advice as well, where you just said just have fun. Sometimes it's okay to just have fun and just enjoy the thing for the thing itself. I think in today's society, for some reason, there's all of this pressure to turn hobbies into like a side business, or you always have to be extra productive in everything you do, or everything you have to be fantastic at. You have to be an expert at everything. If you like to draw, you have to be amazing at drawing. Otherwise, there's no value in it, and that's complete rubbish. It's terrible advice.
Oh yeah.
And I wish less people focused on that, and people focus more on just like having fun and not taking yourself so seriously, not taking everyone else so seriously. And just being kind to yourself. Self-love is so important, and it's not something that's taught very well. It's not taught at all, or it wasn't in my high school experience. It wasn't at university. But I think there are certain things that everyone should know and should learn to do. And self-love is one of those things. Absolutely. Most important piece
100%.
of advice out there. I love that in the chat, Chantal and Johan are saying that high school is very much a forced environment. I think university is as well to some regard, in that like even if you choose to be at that university or that high school, it's an environment that you haven't chosen to be in that specific environment. No one chooses to go to an 8 a.m. class because they like an 8 a.m. class. No one chooses to, do 5 subjects a day. It's something, 9 to 3 every day for 5 days a week. And no one chooses this life for themselves, even if schooling is so important to you. But I think it's important to remember that once that period of your life is done, you then get to create your own environments for the most part. So
100%. And it's a lot of resilience building too, right? If nothing else, you're gonna come out as a more resilient person. And I also really relate to what you said about like not everything has to be like perfect or a side hustle, because I find myself sometimes too falling into the trap of like, well, how's this gonna help me? Like if I do this, what dividends is it gonna pay? And that is just such a horrible way of thinking, because sometimes the good part of it is that it makes you happy, and that's just as valuable. And I think a lot of us fall into that. So totally relate.
Yeah, for sure. And it's the same with having to, we talk a lot about finding your people and stuff. You don't always have to have a million friends either. I mean, I think as you get older, as you get to my old age, I think you realize the value in just having a core group, like a small group of people that you can truly be yourself around. You can joke around, you can be yourself. You don't have to worry about judgment or shame or anything. You can share your opinions and ask for advice, and you're all going to be good friends at the end of it. So, I think that's also an important lesson to learn as you grow older, that you don't have to hang on to friends just because you have past experience with them or past history with them. You can find new people. You don't need to have lots of people. If you like being alone, that's totally okay. There's so many different people in this world. There's not one type of person, and there's not one type of person you should be, except maybe nice. Just be a nice person. be a good soul.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tiny but mighty group of friends, Chantal says in the group. I love this. Not everything has to be perfect. My daily life when coding a script that would make any other programmer cry. Johan, I love that. Coding is just so particular, and yet there's just so many ways to do it. Yeah, that's life though, isn't it? Yeah, even when you have a set
really
structure of rules, there can be so many ways to approach things. So, always show you're working is probably the biggest lesson I learned from high school. Always show you're working.
Yeah, or else you lose half the marks, don't you?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's life, baby. Yeah. Except for crypto for some reason. There's no working involved in that. You just like to make money or you don't. Yeah, that's weird. Well, Katie, this has been absolutely fantastic. Is there any final words you want to have before we close off today's live chat with Katie?
Yeah, I guess just stay passionate, curious, be yourself. All those cliche things that everyone says, they're classic for a reason. They're important things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course, yeah. Don't forget to live, laugh, love. Put it up on the wall behind you. Maybe that's what, I'm going to neon sign, live, laugh, love up here
I'm
behind
gonna get
me.
like all those plaques for the house plaques and just put them everywhere.
Absolutely. Yeah, shameless. Don't even, yeah, just absolutely shameless. Love it. Thank you everyone for joining us in the comments today. We'll be holding another live interview at some time soon, for sure. If you have anyone you want me to speak to, if you have any questions for Katie, feel free to reach out. If you have any friends that you think would be interested in a community of like-minded STEM supporters around Canada, then please join the Canadian STEM Youth Discord server. We've got some wonderful conversations going. We're talking anything from general chit-chat to movies and TV shows to recent news in STEM. If you've got advice you want to ask older people in the community like us, then we've got a channel for that as well. So we're building something wonderful here, hopefully. We're finding our people. We're building our people for our people. And we all love STEM, of course.
You build it, they will come.
Exactly, yeah. Rome wasn't built in a day, but I'm trying, so. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Talk to you again soon. Katie, appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
Bye.